Granted that we want the truth, why not rather untruth and uncertainty, even ignorance?
An audacious question, isn't it? Right from the very first section of Beyond Good and Evil, it immediately challenges philosophy's very core. Nietzsche isn't merely asking about truth, oh no. He's questioning its fundamental value. He's forcing us, really forcing us, to consider something radical. Could untruth, could even ignorance, actually be preferable? So why? Why does he risk such a provocative stance? That's what we'll delve into. In this lecture, we're going to dissect Nietzsche's full frontal assault on the supremacy of truth. And by scrutinizing his arguments, right here in section 1, we'll uncover the profound instability he throws into the heart of philosophy. More than that, we'll gain tools to question our own most cherished assumptions about knowledge, about value. Think about that. So, let's dive deep, shall we? Right into the very first section of Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, Prejudices of Philosophers. It's here that he introduces this concept, the will to truth, not as some self-evident good, but as a problem demanding scrutiny of its value. Our journey will proceed sequentially. We'll move carefully through this dense opening paragraph, unpacking his radical questions, truth versus untruth. Imagine his use of potent metaphors, like the Sphinx, and his unique method of critique. And this is crucial. It sets the stage for his entire project, the re-evaluation of all values. So, let's begin with his opening salvo. He opens, and listen to this, with a striking characterization.
The will to truth, which is to tempt us to many a hazardous enterprise, the famous truthfulness of which all philosophers have hitherto spoken with respect. What questions has this will to truth not laid before us?
Notice the language, tempt, hazardous enterprise. Does that sound familiar? This isn't the calm, dispassionate search for truth we've been taught to expect, is it? Instead, Nietzsche paints this will to truth with allure, with danger, with immense historical weight. All philosophers hitherto, he claims, a bold claim, have treated truthfulness with respect. And this sets the stage, doesn't it? The historical context, an almost universal, an almost uncritical acceptance of truth's pursuit as inherently good, inherently noble, indeed. When Nietzsche makes such a sweeping claim, scholars generally agree. This is a direct confrontation, a confrontation with the entire dominant Western philosophical trajectory. Think about it. From the Socratic Platonic championing of episteme over doxa, through Cartesian rationalism's relentless quest for indubitable foundations, all the way to the Kantian architectonic, where truth underpins both theoretical and practical reason. He's signaling something huge here, a fundamental break, not merely some peripheral academic debate. The will to truth itself becomes a character, personified, an active agent that is laid before us, a whole series of questions. And what kind of questions are these?
What strange, perplexing, questionable questions.
That repetition, strange, perplexing, questionable, it really hammers home the unsettling nature of these inquiries, doesn't it? And then he continues.
It is already a long story, yet it seems as if it were hardly commenced.
Now, this is fascinating. It suggests that despite centuries of philosophical labor, the most fundamental work, questioning this will to truth itself, is, in his view, only just beginning, barely started. And this framing, it's a critique in itself, a sharp one. If the story has hardly commenced, then what on earth have philosophers been doing all this time? A provocative question, to say the least. You can feel the frustration building, can't you? It leads to a turning point.
Is it any wonder if we at last grow distrustful, lose patience, and turn impatiently away?
It's crucial. Nietzsche is trying to pull us in, to make us share this impatience with traditional philosophy. He wants us on his side. And then comes a pivotal metaphor, a powerful one.
That this Sphinx teaches us at last to ask questions ourselves?
The Sphinx, a creature of riddles, of life and death questions. What an image! Philosophy, or maybe the problem of truth itself, becomes this enigmatic, dangerous figure. But notice the shift in dynamic here. It's subtle, but so important. Instead of us just passively receiving questions, this Sphinx teaches us at last to ask questions ourselves. This is a call to arms, a call for active, critical engagement. And then, the questioning turns inward, sharply.
Who is it really that puts questions to us here? What really is this will to truth in us?
Now, this is a prime example of what we can call Nietzsche's method of radical questioning. He's not just looking for descriptive answers, not at all. He's using the interrogative form, the question itself, as a lever to undermine the very bedrock of prior philosophical assumptions. And as our content analysis for today points out, this approach isn't about simple disagreement with old conclusions about truth. No, it's about interrogating why. Why was the whole inquiry framed around truth's paramount value in the first place? It's a powerful technique, designed to expose those hidden presuppositions, the things we take for granted. Think about this for a moment. What's an assumption in your own field of study, or even in your daily life, that's so foundational, so deeply embedded, that it's rarely, if ever, questioned? Nietzsche then charts a crucial intellectual movement. He states,
In fact, we made a long halt at the question as to the origin of this will, until at last we came to an absolute standstill before a yet more fundamental question. We inquired about the value of this will.
And this is the core maneuver of the entire section, absolutely central. Philosophers, you see, might have pondered where this desire for truth comes from, its psychology perhaps, or its history. But Nietzsche, he insists this is all secondary. The more fundamental question, he tells us, concerns its value. This shift, it's a perfect example of Nietzsche's application of critique as a philosophical method. And as our content analysis notes, this isn't just disagreement. It's a systematic unsettling, a deliberate destabilization of the very foundations of a concept. So, by prioritizing the question of value over origin, when it comes to the will to truth, he's doing something monumental. He's directly setting the stage for his larger, iconic project, the transvaluation of all values, the Anwertung aller Werte. He's asking, point blank, is this will to truth actually beneficial for us? For life itself? What is its ultimate worth? This reframing, it's absolutely pivotal. Everything hinges on this. And this brings us to the explosive heart of the paragraph. Brace yourselves.
Granted that we want the truth, why not rather untruth and uncertainty, even ignorance?
There it is. The hazardous enterprise made explicit. He doesn't just question the value of truth anymore. Now, he posits its opposites, untruth, uncertainty, even ignorance, as potentially preferable. Can you imagine? This is profoundly destabilizing. It shakes the very ground we stand on. For millennia, philosophy has largely operated on a single premise. Truth is the goal, the highest epistemic good, often a moral and metaphysical one too. And Nietzsche? He forces us to confront the staggering possibility that this entire hierarchy might be inverted. Or, at the very least, that it's not nearly as self-evident as we've always believed. That why not rather, it's a direct challenge, thrown down. So, how do we even begin to interpret such an audacious question? Well, here we encounter a significant point of interpretive tension within Nietzsche scholarship, and our content analysis highlights this. It's a real sticking point. There just isn't universal agreement on precisely how to take this provocation. Not at all. Broadly speaking, two major interpretive pathways emerge from the scholarly fog. First, there's what we might call the radical pragmatist reading. This interpretation, it takes Nietzsche at his word. Perhaps untruth, uncertainty, or even ignorance are sometimes more valuable than truth. Especially, and this is key, if value is measured by criteria like life enhancement, power, or the sheer ability to create. From this viewpoint, the utility of a belief, its function in a particular form of life, might actually outweigh its correspondence to some supposed objective reality. Think about that. The textual support, it's direct. He explicitly presents these untruth, uncertainty, ignorance as alternatives whose value needs comparison. This reading also aligns with a view of Nietzsche's method as a form of vitalism, where concepts are assessed fundamentally based on their relation to life, to its flourishing. And it's right here, as our content analysis points out, that we see a fascinating intellectual connection. A connection to later pragmatic philosophies which also emphasize the utility of beliefs, their role in guiding action, sometimes quite independently of any strict correspondence to objective truth. Thinkers like William James, or even much later, Richard Rorty, in their own distinct ways, they explore very similar terrains regarding the function of belief, its practical import. Then, there's the other major path, the foundational critique reading. In this view, that explosive question, why not rather untruth, serves more as a rhetorical device, a kind of philosophical bomb, a reductio ad absurdum, designed to expose the glaring lack of justification for the traditional, unquestioning valuation of truth. So, Nietzsche isn't necessarily out there advocating for untruth as a general principle. Not exactly. Rather, he's demonstrating something crucial. If we cannot adequately answer why truth is to be preferred, then the entire grand edifice of truth-based philosophy, well, it stands on incredibly precarious ground. Shaky foundations indeed. The risk he talks about later. That would then be the risk of revealing this foundational void, this emptiness at the core. This reading, therefore, sees Nietzsche's method as primarily critical and genealogical, focused squarely on undermining accepted values by relentlessly questioning their justifications. Now, both of these interpretations, they have merit. They both find strong support in the text. And the ambiguity here, it's likely intentional, classic Nietzsche. It serves a dual purpose, to critique the past, certainly, but also to gesture towards new, deeply unsettling possibilities for the future. So, let me ask you, which reading seems more compelling to you right now, at this initial stage? And why might your own methodological assumptions, we all have them, mean you one way or the other? Take a moment, consider that. This direct, unblinking questioning of truth's value is, of course, highly controversial. It's a challenge to millennia of philosophical tradition, a profound one, and it's simply impossible to ignore its contemporary relevance. Absolutely impossible. As our content analysis notes, think about our current era, an era so often dubbed post-truth, an era characterized by widespread disinformation, by the constant challenging of established factual consensus. In this world, Nietzsche's probing into truth's fundamental value resonates with an almost unsettling prescience. It's chilling, really. His questions, they force us to confront how societies navigate truth claims when their very value is contested. This makes his inquiry not just some archaic philosophical puzzle, but a profoundly modern concern. A live wire. So, what's he doing? Is Nietzsche advocating for a world where anything goes? A free-for-all? Or is he, perhaps more profoundly, diagnosing a deep-seated problem in our inherited value systems? Is he forcing us to seek more robust justifications for why we value truth? If, indeed, we still do. And this, right here, is where, as scholars, a healthy degree of scholarly humility is absolutely warranted. Interpreting Nietzsche's ultimate positive program, if there even is one laid out simply here, is notoriously complex. Our content analysis rightly points out that the issue is identified as deeply problematic, and his later development of perspectivism only adds further layers of complexity. It's a tangled web. He may not be advocating for a simple embrace of falsehood. That's likely too simplistic a reading. It's more probable that he's undertaking a difficult, painstaking deconstruction before any kind of reconstruction is even possible. To truly grasp his full intent, that requires navigating the entirety of his challenging, often contradictory, corpus. It means acknowledging that definitive answers are elusive. They're part of an ongoing, vibrant scholarly conversation. And yes, his later development of perspectivism will complicate all of this immensely, suggesting not a simple embrace of falsehood, but a radical recognition that our truths are always formed from particular standpoints, and they always serve particular interests. A challenging thought. Nietzsche then continues, relentlessly exploring the dynamic of this confrontation.
The problem of the value of truth presented itself before us, or was it we who presented ourselves before the problem?
This reflexive questioning, this profound uncertainty about agency, who is acting upon whom, it deepens the sense of philosophy as an encounter with something truly enigmatic, something powerful. And then he returns to that potent metaphor.
Which of us is the Oedipus here? Which the Sphinx?
Oedipus, the tragic hero, the solver of riddles, who in solving the Sphinx's riddle brought about his own terrible fate by uncovering an even more terrible truth. And the Sphinx, the enigmatic poser of fatal riddles. So, who are we in this drama? Is the philosopher Oedipus bravely confronting the riddle of truth's value, or is the problem itself the Sphinx? And are we the ones fated to be destroyed, or perhaps transformed by this very encounter? This deliberate, masterful use of the Oedipus or Sphinx dynamic, it's a powerful instance of Nietzsche's philosophical rhetoric, a key methodological aspect, as highlighted in our content analysis. He's not just making a dry, logical point here, far from it. He's employing vivid, evocative imagery to convey the profound, the existential stakes of this inquiry. This metaphor, it transforms an abstract philosophical problem into something visceral, a life or death encounter. It underscores that risk he keeps mentioning, the risk inherent in this line of questioning, and it aims to jolt us, the readers, right out of our complacency. It's a stark reminder, isn't it, that philosophy, for Nietzsche, is often far more akin to a dangerous art form than it is to a dispassionate clinical science. And so, he concludes this astonishing first section by emphasizing the sheer novelty, the audacity of this entire line of inquiry.
It would seem to be a rendezvous of questions and notes of interrogation. And could it be believed that it at last seems to us as if the problem had never been propounded before, as if we were the first to discern it, get a sight of it, and risk raising it.
This claim to be the first, it's so characteristic of Nietzsche's self-positioning, isn't it? His way of carving out his unique space. Now, from a purely historiographical perspective, while earlier skeptics, and there were many, certainly questioned the attainability of truth, Nietzsche's radical focus on its value, that is indeed a significant pivot, a game changer. Scholarly readings, as our content analysis on intellectual connections points out, often see this as Nietzsche consciously, deliberately, marking his departure. A departure from the entire Socratic Platonist establishment, right through to Kant. Figures who, despite their own critical innovations, largely upheld truth's inherent and unquestioned worth. He's positioning himself not merely as an innovator. No, he sees himself as an epochal turning point, a new beginning. And that emphasis on risk, it's absolutely crucial. Listen again.
For there is risk in raising it. Perhaps there is no greater risk.
What is this risk he speaks of? Is it the risk of intellectual error? Of social ostracism? The terrifying collapse of meaning? Or perhaps, most profoundly, is it the risk of discovering that our most cherished values, that they have no ultimate foundation, that the will to truth itself might lead not to salvation, but to a chilling confrontation with a void, with nothingness? This notion of risk is daring to question foundational values, is a direct conceptual link, a clear pathway to what our content analysis identifies as his overarching philosophical project, the transvaluation of all values. By problematizing the value of truth, right here at the outset, he's initiating the very process he believes is absolutely necessary for philosophy, for culture itself, to move forward. A reassessment from the ground up. So, what have we witnessed here? We've seen Nietzsche's audacious maneuver, transforming the hitherto unquestioned will to truth into a profound, unsettling problem. And how? By interrogating its value, not merely its origin. This radical questioning, amplified by his masterful use of potent rhetoric, the Sphinx, Oedipus, it forces us, doesn't it? It forces us to confront an unsettling paradox. That philosophy's foundational pursuit, the search for truth, might itself rest on unexamined, perhaps even hazardous, assumptions. The challenge has been laid bare. He's suggesting that the very act of valuing truth above all else is a risk, a profound risk, and its full extent, we are only just beginning to discern that. But our exploration doesn't end here. Oh no, it deepens. Next, we turn to section 2 of Beyond Good and Evil. And here, Nietzsche targets another cornerstone of traditional thought, the so-called belief in antitheses of values. He's going to expose how metaphysicians, despite their solemn vow of the omnibus dubitandum, to doubt everything, utterly failed to question the supposed opposition between concepts like truth and error, or good and evil. Often, he'll argue, they viewed these from incredibly limiting, frog perspectives. What a phrase. And we will grapple with his dangerous perhapses, his stunning, world-shattering suggestions. Suggestions like what if what we deem evil actually holds a higher value for life? Or what if good and evil are, in his words, insidiously related, knotted, and crocheted? This line of inquiry, this is powerful stuff, a potent form of proto-genealogy. So, prepare yourselves. Prepare to confront how these radical hypotheses don't just challenge ancient philosophical prejudices. They do more. They call for a new kind of philosopher, a philosopher daring enough, courageous enough, to navigate these uncharted, dangerous, intellectual territories. Are you ready?